Hi, I'm Zealand Turner. I'm the Director of School Communications here at the Pennsylvania Leadership Charter School. I'm sitting here with our brand new Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Joey Rider-Bertrand. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
This is Winging It.
I've been in education now for almost 30 years. Actually, I guess it's been 30 years if you count prior to K-12. Because I started out in early childhood education.
That definitely counts.
Yeah, in a child care setting. And so I was, I did summer camps, which is what got me hooked on education.
Yeah.
While I was still in college. And then because of that, I thought I wanted to teach like the little kids and do summer camps and that sort of thing. And so I ended up becoming a daycare director when I first graduated. That's what I thought I wanted to do. I really was looking into kind of cutting my teeth in an inner city child care center in Harrisburg, and then was approached by a school district to see if I was interested in a K-12 position. And so I'm always been open to change and open to trying new things. And I was young and I thought this is the time to do it, to see if I'd like teaching in an elementary school. And so that's what brought me into K-12 education.
So summer camps,
right,
is where you started.
Right.
What kind of summer camp are we talking about? Rock climbing or STEM or something in between?
So this was back in the 90s, and so there really weren't STEM camps at that time. It was just a general summer camp program for inner city kids in Harrisburg, ran through the YWCA.
Okay.
And it was my summers when I was still in college, and kids anywhere from age, kindergarten up through 8th graders who came to these summer camps. And we would do some outdoorsy things to the extent we could in the middle of inner city Harrisburg. But, a lot of the things were activities indoors as well, arts and crafts and some educational things to try to bridge the gap between school years. Mm-hmm. So there would be some math and English language arts types of activities as well. But it was just fun. It was just great fun with the kids. And I don't know, that was really, I was a psychology major before that.
Okay.
And so that's what shifted me to becoming an education major in college.
Okay. You get called out by someone in the community, says, hey, do you want to explore K through 12? Mm-hmm. And where does that take you?
I asked a lot of questions about what the positions would be, and it was an elementary gifted education position.
Whoa.
Which was really interesting to me.
Yeah.
I went through that type of program myself when I was a student.
Okay.
And it was in a wonderful district in Lancaster County, and I applied and a few days before school started. So it was, I don't know, maybe a week before school was starting, I applied for the position, I was interviewed, and then like a day or two before the school was starting, I was approved by the board and jumping into a new position.
So that's super exciting, but also like, oh my goodness,
yeah.
Hello, okay, did you sleep for the next 2 days or what?
I like innovation, anything that's new and exciting, and I'm in education because I believe that kids deserve the very best education we can possibly give them. We have new technology being developed all of the time, new educational resources, lots of research around what works and what doesn't work in education, and I believe that we owe children our very best. We owe them that we take into consideration all of those things and move forward as quickly with progress as we need to always be providing what's on the cutting edge.
What kind of sparked that in you? Do you feel like you had a great journey growing up through the education system? Did you do private, at home, public? What is your personal education story?
Yeah, my education is mostly public schools. Mm-hmm. Very early childhood, it was a little tiny private Montessori school, and then I went into the public education system. But I did move a lot, and so I had experiences at lots of different school systems. And because of that, I think I saw education done in different ways.
Yeah.
And so I had a lot of great teachers. I had some that were not so great as well. But I think that experience of all of the extracurriculars, all of the arts that I was exposed to, all of the things that I participated in outside of the classroom experience, and all of the advisors and coaches and people that were a part of my life during that time, I think shaped what I thought education should look like. I thought the types of things that we would see in, so I was in chorus and band and
What'd you play?
musicals, and I very poorly played the flute.
Okay, great. Love it.
I was not good at it at all. I liked singing, so I would say my voice was my instrument because I did a lot of musical theater and that sort of thing.
I love that.
And fine art. I loved to paint and draw and would enter competitions as a kid and that sort of thing. And so I think, and I played sports. So I think all of those things were part of a well-rounded education. And I believe that all of those things should be a part of every child's education who is interested in those things and so, or has talent in any of those areas, or just wants to be exposed to lots of different things. Like education should be customized to be able to provide a student with all of those opportunities. And that was missing in many ways from my formal part of my education because it was the extracurricular activities that I did.
Okay, so you've got 2 days to prep, and you're headed into your first day as a gifted education teacher, elementary school.
Elementary.
And you just hit the ground running?
Yeah, you really do. So I jumped into a classroom that was not really set up the way I would have set up my classroom. I read through a whole bunch of kids' gifted IEPs at that time and just started creating an educational program for them.
So how long were you directly working with children before you started to move into a more administrative path?
I taught at the elementary level for 10 years before I then moved into a quasi-administrative path. So in the district that I was working in at the time, the new superintendent was creating coordinator positions for content areas, but they weren't necessarily administrator positions. They were more of like teacher on special assignment types of positions. And they were all half-time positions, so you had to have something else as the other half of your job.
Okay.
And so I had a science teaching certification in addition to elementary teaching certification because my master's is in science ed. And so I applied for this coordinator position for science and technology and was hired for it, but there's no way to split a elementary classroom teaching role with that. And I was teaching 5th grade at the time.
Okay.
And so I decided, okay, well, I'll be a high school science teacher so that I can do this position. And so I started teaching at the high school then, 9th grade physical science and environmental science classes. Really, when you're in that type of role, you pick up whatever's like the leftover class.
Okay, sure.
So you can't have your favorite thing. I can't go in and say like, oh, well, I only want to teach environmental science because that's what I love most in science and that's one of my certifications. So it's like, oh, well, all right, all the full-time teachers have already picked up all of these sections of these courses, so I'll take whatever the leftovers are.
Which
so,
were?
Physical science for 9th graders, and then 11th and 12th grade environmental science.
Okay.
Yeah, weird mix.
Well, also just to wrap your head around while you're also doing this coordinator position, so you're clearly very good at multitasking and putting your brain in a bunch of different directions and kind of still being a chef in the kitchen. So where does it go from there?
So I did that job for, I guess it was 5-6 years. And then another position in another district came open that was a supervisor of curriculum and instruction for STEM.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And so I applied for that job, and after a pretty lengthy hiring process, moved to a new position in a new school district, and was there for a few years supervising STEM education, primarily at the secondary level. When I first came in, I was K-12. And then we did a job split reorganization thing, and I became the secondary ed supervisor. So I picked up math when that happened.
And is that natural for you?
I like math. I'm good at math. I understand a lot about pedagogy in any content area, just from having been an elementary teacher. So when you're an elementary teacher, you teach all subjects. And so you get pretty comfortable with all those subjects. And so even though I saw science and technology education as my more specialty area, I was pretty comfortable picking up the math piece as well, at least at the secondary level and with the things that were going on in the district at the time.
You are every piece of this way. Definitely not a let me dip my toes and take the temperature. You come running in and jump right into the deep end.
Yeah, I'm all in on everything I do. Doesn't matter what it is, I'm all in.
I love that. So where do you go from you're now in secondary education in a supervisory position?
Mm-hmm. I was there for a few years. It was a long, long commute, almost 2 hours each direction. And I had a young child at the time at home. And so it just became really difficult to have that work-life balance that you need when you're raising kids to stay in that type of role. It was a dream job. I loved the work. I loved the intensity of it. And had I not had a different opportunity, I probably would have uprooted my family and we would have moved into that community for me to be able to stay in that job.
Okay.
But another opportunity came up. And it was at an intermediate unit, and they were looking for somebody to be a curriculum and instruction specialist and doing a lot of professional development and working with school districts to develop curriculum and improve their programs.
I feel like you just kind of touched on it, but I want to be sensitive to my mom at home who has no idea what an intermediate unit is.
Sure. Yeah, there are intermediate units across the state of Pennsylvania, kind of an intergovernmental type of agency. They live in between the Pennsylvania Department of Education and school districts. And so many of them are 1 or 2 counties large. In this area, it's the Chester County IU. And they support school districts with whatever their needs are. Lots of special education programs. I was not in the special education side of things. I was in the general education side, but I led a team of people who were doing professional development and supporting school districts, supporting non-public schools, and doing some ed tech.
Are we talking about helping interpret language of law, helping institute policies, all of the above?
It can be all those things. It depends on the intermediate unit and the needs of the school districts in that region.
So different intermediate units specialize in different things.
Yeah, they were all started by the state back in the 70s. They're a little over 50 years old at this point. But when state funding ended to support intermediate units, then they each had to become entrepreneurial and determine what services they could provide to their districts that districts would either be willing to pay a membership fee for or a la carte, services.
Okay, so remind me what the intermediate unit you jumped into specialized in.
Special education was one of those things. There were lots and lots of classes of students spread out across the 2 counties that were oftentimes in a district where they maybe would have only had 1 or 2 students with similar needs. And so when you look across 22 school districts, you're able to find kind of that critical mass to be able to then have a whole classroom of students and a classroom teacher and all the supports that are needed to support those children. Some districts are big enough that they're able to just provide those things themselves, but many times it's more of a consortium-based model. So that's one area of specialty, but then the other area of specialty at this IU was really around entrepreneurial services. And so it could be helping a school district design something, a new program that they're going to offer. It could be curriculum development, professional development for teachers, especially in the areas of technology. And so like implementing AI, using hybrid learning approaches. Online learning was another area that the IU that I was at really specialized in. There were 15 to 17,000 students in programs that were supported by IU 13 for online learning. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So professional development, that is something that as a parent, I know that's a day on the school calendar that my kid doesn't go to school, but that staff are still working. It's not a holiday. It is professional development. And I know it sounds straightforward, but before I started working in education, I knew nothing more than, okay, I need to arrange for childcare.
Yeah.
What is professional development? And I don't want to dive too deep, but how often? What is it for? What are they doing? Is it just a bunch of team meetings? What are we talking about?
In any profession, you have continuing education so that the people in that profession are always learning and growing and knowing how to serve whoever they serve the best they possibly can. And so professional development is the continuing education for teachers and anyone else who serves in education. And it really is about learning, a learning opportunity to advance the profession, which means improve the way we teach students.
So I'm seeing your eyes light up as soon as you say that. What did you get involved in at your previous IU that was providing services for professional development?
So I did a lot of STEM education, professional development. Oftentimes people think of STEM as just an acronym. It stands for science, technology, engineering, and math.
Okay.
But there is specific instructional approaches that are used within STEM. STEM should be integrative. If you're taking a science class, you're not doing STEM. You're doing science. And so STEM means that you're really integrating in all 4 components of STEM education in a really seamless, natural way. Okay. And so that was a lot of what I trained people on when I was at the intermediate unit, because it was new. It really came around the early 2000s. And, we're still in the early phases, I think, of implementing what STEM education can look like in educational settings. And so that was a big shift for many school districts and a lot of what I did in terms of professional development.
Are you excited to bring some of those insights here to PALCS? I know that we have STEM programs here. I know that we have teachers that specialize in that. What have you seen so far that intrigues you?
Yeah, I'm really excited to bring it to PALCS. So the things that I've seen so far at PALCS in my 2.5 weeks since I've been here have been some really incredible programs at the Center for Performing and Fine Arts, at the University Scholars Program, and even the elementary, middle school, and high school programming that I've seen. And the people that I've met are all passionate about what they teach, about what they bring to their instructional setting, and are eager to learn new things. And so I think there's a real opportunity to make connections here with not only my own educational background and resources that I bring, but people that I know and other programs that are out there that I think will enhance a lot of the things that are already in place. You're always nervous when you come to a new setting. Right?
Are you? Because you're
workplace.
Not giving nervousness.
Well, I think the things that you worry about is, where are they at? Where is this school at on their journey around curriculum development? What does the professional development program look like? What's the quality of instruction that students are receiving? Do they have an assessment system in place where there are common assessments, and are they tracking data? And you look for all of those things that a quality educational system has in place. And then you do a gap analysis and try to figure out, like, well, how can I enhance? Where can I add something? What's something that might be missing to improve upon? So far, in everything I've seen, all of the pieces are in place, right? So it's exciting to come in somewhere where there is a robust system of curriculum in place, and teachers are all invested in the process of developing curriculum, and then learning what's in the new curriculum. So, for example, the STEELS standards: science, technology, engineering, environmental literacy. So those standards, which were adopted in the state of Pennsylvania a couple years ago, had an implementation window so that districts and schools and charter schools could phase them in.
Okay. Here's a new thing, but
you got a little time. Yeah, and then
figure it out.
Right. And then the assessments will happen and that sort of thing. And so some places across the state of Pennsylvania are slow to implement and slow to make those types of changes. That's not the case here. So there's been a full, planning and development period and implementation of the STEEL standards. And teachers are really invested in the process. I got to sit in on, I think, one of the last meetings of the year for the team that's leading the STEELS implementation here. And I was like, wow, you've already, been developing your curriculum maps, and the teachers are already completely implementing the standards. And so now it's a matter of ensuring that they have the instructional resources that they need to support that instruction. And I think we're just well on our way for it. But it's exciting. It's exciting to come in and see that there's nothing to fix. There's nothing that needs to be remediated in any way. It's more of, wow, you're already at this level. Let's now figure out how I can help support or remove barriers to move us to the next level.
I love that. What drew you to PALCS in the first place if it's, you know, you're starting to investigate, be part of meetings, figure things out. You said yourself you've been here for 2.5 weeks, and that kind of blows my mind because it feels like you are really good at jumping in the deep end, because I feel like you have been here much longer than that in the greatest way.
I've always been interested in the charter school movement. Fundamentally, charter schools were designed in Pennsylvania in particular to try out things that would be difficult to implement or do in a traditional public school setting, oftentimes because of all of the legislative bureaucracy that kind of, I don't know, like makes it difficult to try out new things in schools because there's just lots of mandates and laws and regulations that you need to follow. And so the charter school movement has allowed for to do things differently in education, to try out things that maybe would be very difficult to implement in a public school setting because of either size or funding or what's already been in place for the last 100 years. You know, charter schools are newer. And so you can kind of start from scratch and build something from its, you know, very design phase to fully implementing and then course correcting along the way and making changes and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And so that entrepreneurial or innovative mindset was very interesting to me. That's how I operate in education. And so I was really looking for a place where that is part of the culture and part of the way of doing things. And so then a cyber charter school in particular was interesting to me because I think it's the future of education. If COVID taught us nothing else, it's that we can do education in a cyber environment or an online environment. And I think cyber charter schools are in a position to teach everyone else how to do it. You know, students who receive specialized services, special education services, or learners who are identified for gifted education have an IEP or an individualized education plan. What I have seen here is that every learner has some type of individualized plan for their learning journey. And so it's really unique when a school system is able to personalize learning in that way for every individual. And so that means there are lots of courses offered here that you would not see offered in brick and mortar schools, or that you would not even see offered in many charter schools that are, you know, relatively innovative charter schools. And it's because by offering all of those things, it allows a student to have a real personalized experience as they move through K to 12. Certainly, you know, in the earlier years, K to 5, it looks a little more similar for each student because we're building a real foundation of their education experience. And everything, of course, is standards aligned as well. But as students then continue through the system, middle school and high school age, there are so many different opportunities here that are really unique to PALCS that I have not seen in very many other places. I've maybe seen them when I've visited schools like in other states, or when I've been a part of a professional development program for leaders where you're learning about what works well in other nations and the research that we're getting out of, you know, Finland and Singapore and Ireland and Australia and the types of things that they're doing. Those best practices that are viewed as really innovative practices here in the United States, many of them are a part of what students can take advantage of at PALCS.
It is a safe space to explore, and it is a supported space to explore because you're like, oh, you're interested in that? You try it out. Oh, you like that? You want to take it to the next level?
Right.
We are never going to run out of levels to help you rise to.
Right. Well, and if you decide as you start to move in that direction, I changed my mind. This isn't what I thought it would be. Oh, well, we have this other thing now that you can explore that you're interested in. So it allows for a learner who wants to explore lots of different areas. So whether it's the arts or whether it's STEM education or the humanities, whatever it may be, they have those opportunities. But if they also are just really into something, like I'm somebody who really is into dance and theater, I can now kind of specialize in that through an arts intensive pathway as well. So it's either your path can be either or anything. Your path can be whatever you want it to be.
this or that, coffee or tea?
Both. I can't pick one or the other. I really can't. So I have to be right in the middle. But here's why. I am a coffee drinker in the morning.
Uh-huh.
Once I've had my morning coffee, I don't have any more caffeine for the day.
Okay.
So I do maybe one coffee in the morning, maybe two.
Mm-hmm.
If I continue with caffeine, there's a version of me that is too intense for most people. And so I then will cut it back to usually like herbal teas, and maybe if I need a little afternoon dose of caffeine, I'll do some type of tea that has caffeine in it.
Okay.
So I'm tea for the rest of the day, and water. I'm a big water drinker.
Reading or audiobook? And I'm going to say specifically outside of the work environment, home, pleasure, leisure. Reading or audiobook?
Yeah, audiobooks.
Yeah?
I spend a lot of time in my car now. I have a long commute. And so, but I've always listened to audiobooks. I've had Audible for, I don't know how long, and many years.
Yeah.
And I actually really like the narration. I like hearing the voices of the different narrators.
Wait, well, I was going to say music or podcast while driving, but are you definitely an audiobook, or do you flirt with other options?
I listen to music as well. And so when I'm on back roads, which I take some to get to the turnpike, and then when I get off the turnpike, that's when I listen to music, because I can't focus on the audiobook as well when I'm trying to focus on the roads.
So, yeah.
But then on the turnpike is when I have the audiobook on. So music, yeah. I'm more of a music over podcast.
Like rock and roll, orchestra, today's hits.
I love all music. I really do. I obviously have favorite bands and go to concerts and things like that, but I still love a lot of music from the 80s and 90s, but I also love a lot of music from today. So I'm kind of all over the place on the type of music I listen to.
Sweet or salty?
Sweet.
In general?
Sweet. Well, no. I would say in general, I don't know that I'm a sweet or a salty person, but definitely savory. Definitely savory. But I don't like things heavily salted, and I don't like things that are overly sweet. Like if I eat something overly sweet, it's on occasion, and it's something that's really decadent and worth it, and you have to have it.
Be a rodeo clown or matador?
Rodeo clown.
Really?
All right, so this is going to bring up a childhood type
Let's
of thing. I rode horses in rodeos as a kid. So I grew up on a farm.
What?
I grew up on a farm, and I had horses and would show horses. And many times people nowadays ride English instead of Western. But at that time, growing up on a farm, you usually would ride Western. And in riding Western, oftentimes, if you like to go fast, you're going to want to get into some of the rodeo types of events. So barrel racing and pole bending, and I don't know, cutting and reining and some of those types of things that are rodeo events.
That sounds so
Yeah,
cool.
so I grew up on a farm, Christmas tree farm actually, but we happened to have horses as well.
Hogwarts or Jedi Academy?
Hogwarts.
I mean, duh. Which house?
Yeah. Oh. So I have done a lot of those little quizzes because over the years, when the Harry Potter books first came out, I was teaching elementary school. And so as each book came out, I got to go through that experience with my students of a new book coming out and reading it.
What an awesome time was that when they were just coming out and we were waiting for those releases.
Oh, and the kids were so excited. And to have fifth graders that would read a book, this thick.
And be so proud of it.
And
carry
tear
it around
through
like
it.
You're
and they would tear through it. And it was a lot of fun. So I am House of Gryffindor.
Okay.
And my Halloween costume that I wear when I sit out on my porch and give out candy to kids is Professor McGonagall.
Oh my gosh, I just fell in love with you on another level.
I decorate, everything outside as it's Hogwarts, and I sit there and have my little wand and give out candy and try to use a voice.
Okay, you win. As an academic leader, what do you think you are excited to, that you are confidently bringing to this role, and what do you think you might be surprised by or excited by and that you had not anticipated being able to bring to this role as our new Chief Academic Officer here at PALCS?
My greatest strength is in coordination and alignment. And so I build things that are really cohesive, from curriculum to the professional development plan that supports it, to the implementation and supporting teachers, to how we assess it to know whether or not it's working, and then that whole design process of using that feedback to ensure that we are refining every little part of the system to be just a well-oiled machine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big picture person, but can also drill down into the details. And so that cohesion, I think, comes from being able to kind of see the big picture and hold that in my head at the same time that I'm looking at the really small details that can sometimes be the things that move the needle. So I thought I would be coming in and really teaching everybody about curriculum design and design systems and feedback loops and how tightly aligned the professional development needs to be, so that all of those things allow teachers to be the very best possible teachers that each of them can be, bringing their own interests and passions and expertise to teaching. And so you're really individualizing as well for the teacher as you're doing all of these things. And I came in not knowing like who would be the staff that support the teachers, who are the other members of the academic team who are developing curriculum and working on that or looking at data. And as I've met them, wow, there are some amazing people here. I've said to Dr. Johnson a few times now, I'm like, you have a really good team here. I have a really good team here now. I'm so excited to work with this team.